Lived in Ohio my entire life, and it's a place that clings to you like a dampness. People scoff when I say I'd never leave, as if it's some cursed wasteland of crumbling strip malls and endless cornfields. They don't understand. Ohio, it isn't just land, it's a pulse, a low hum of something ancient and wrong that thrums beneath the soil. The stories here don't lie. They fester, grow teeth in the dark. You grow up hearing whispers, half-told tales from older kids, campfire warnings, rumors that curl like smoke. And once you start listening, really listening, it's like tugging on a thread that unravels into something vast and hungry. I was 8 when the grassman first crept into my nightmares. Not Bigfoot, no, something older, leaner, with eyes that glinted from the edges of soybean fields. My Uncle Denny, half drunk, on cheap beer, would lean in close and mutter about them, his breath sour and his voice low. "They're not animals," he'd say, eyes darting to the window. "They're older than the woods, older than us. They watch." It's that kind of talk burrows into a kid's mind, roots deep. Ohio wears a polite mask, church steeples and potlucks, but beneath it, there's a rancid underbelly, a tangle of old bones and secrets that refuse to stay buried. I didn't just love it, I craved it. By high school, I was consumed. I devoured every scrap of local lore, ghost stories, missing persons, folklore that felt like it was written in blood. I bought a battered camcorder off Facebook Marketplace, a clunky thing that smelled faintly of mildew, and started filming. I called it Rust Belt Shadows, my ticket to something bigger. Hundreds of follows, maybe a podcast, part 1 to storm drains, abandoned playgrounds, barns sagging like corpses, narrating to one but the dark. It wasn't enough to hear the stories. I wanted to touch them. That's what drew me to Gore Orphanage. The name alone was a wound, sharp and jagged, like something carved into a tree by a trembling hand. In Vermilion, tucked deep in the woods, it was a place cursed beyond repair. Fires, dead children, screams that lingered in the air like mold. The kind of legend that made your skin trickle, not from fear, but from the pool of something wrong. I had to see it. It was a Saturday in October, the air warm but heavy, light, a sickly amber that didn't belong to summer anymore. The drive to Vermilion took hours, my GPS glitching as the roads narrowed into veins of cracked asphalt. It stopped at a sagging porch where an old man smoked, his eyes like clouded glass. "Where's Gore Orphanage?" I asked, my voice too loud in the stillness. He didn't look at me, just pointed with a trembling hand, the cigarette's ember glowing like a baleful eye. "Ain't worth it, son," he muttered. I should have listened. The path to the orphanage was a scar through the woods, half paved, half dirt, choked with roots that seemed to writhe underfoot. My camera was rolling, capturing the trees that loomed too close, their branches clawing at the sky. I narrated, my voice thin, cracking stupid jokes to drown out the growing sense that I wasn't alone. The woods watched, not with eyes, but with weight. 20 minutes in, the trees parted, and there it was. The ruins of Gore Orphanage, like a stone foundation, cracked and crawling with weeds, and a few rotting boards scattered like broken teeth. The air was thick, like breathing through wet cloth. Something lingered here, not a presence, but a pressure, said the space itself resented my intrusion. I circled the ruins, camera shaking, already picturing the YouTube thumbnail, exploring Gore Orphanage, haunted as hell. Then I saw him cross the clearing, maybe 40 yards away. A figure stood amongst the trees, too thin, dressed in black from head to toe, motionless. No face, just a void where a face should have been. My stomach lurched. I zoomed in, but the lens couldn't find him. He was gone, swallowed by the trees. My poles hammered. Another urban explorer, A local playing a prank. I told myself it was nothing, but the air felt tighter, like a noose, cinching shut. I kept filming, my voice quieter now, my eyes darting to the woods between every word. The shadows stretched longer, their fingers dragging across the earth. Then I saw him again, closer this time, in a thick grove. He didn't move right, his body twisted like a puppet with half-fed strings cut out. I zoomed in, and he ducked behind a tree, quick and unnatural. My mouth went dry. Something was wrong. Not creepy, but broken, okay? Like he didn't belong to this world. Like he'd always been here, waiting. Then the noises started, rustling, low and constant, like something circling just out of sight. Whispers, not words, but fragments, skittering behind my ears. I called out, my voice cracking. Hey man, God man, I'm just filming. I'm not here to mess anything up. Silence answered, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the moment before a scream. I turned back to the clearing, ready to leave, my camera still running. Kata. That's when I heard the footsteps, not walking, but running fast and uneven, like something barely holding itself together. I spun around, parts slamming against my ribs, and there he was, barreling toward me from the trees. It's a black figure moving too fast, arms pumping like pistons, head low, body twitching like it was unraveling. I ran. The path twisted, roots snagging my feet, branches clawing at my face. The camera swung wildly in my hand, capturing nothing but blur. Behind me, the footsteps were relentless, slapping the dirt, snapping branches, gaining. I could feel him. It closed again, not with intent, but with need. Then it hit me, a tad. Not one force, but many. A dozen hands slammed into my back, not pushing, but lifting, hurling me forward. I hit the ground hard, vision flashing white, the camera skittering into the leaves. My breath choked in my throat, my chest burning. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I scrambled to my feet, ankles screaming with every step, and half ran, half staggered toward my car. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of grief and rage. Not English, but something older, guttural, like the earth itself was cursing me. The travel opened, and there was my car, crooked in the weeds. I dove inside, locking the doors, fumbling the keys into the ignition. Through the windshield, I saw them. Not one figure, not two, at least half a dozen, maybe more, standing at the edge of the woods. Black shapes, faceless, motionless, peeled from the shadows like grief made solid. They didn't move, didn't chase, just watched. My hand shook as I floored the gas, tires spitting gravel, the woods blurring past. I didn't stop until I was miles away. My ankles swollen, my chest bruised, my mind replaying that moment. The hands, the whispers, the figures, a tintle. Anyone for days. The footage I had felt tainted, like it wasn't mine to share. I sat in my car outside my house, staring at nothing. The memory of those shapes burning behind my eyes. Eventually, I dug into the history, desperate to make sense of it. There was no Gore orphanage. Not really. The name was a lie, a tangle of misremembered stories. The ruins were the Swift mansion built in the 1800s by a man named Joseph Smith. It changed hands, fell into ruin, and later a nearby building became the Light of Hope Orphanage. That's where the real horror lived. Cord spoke of children dying, disease, neglect, starvation. A fire, they said, took out a wing. Some claimed a caretaker locked the doors, letting the flames consume the screams. Others said the children were already dead, their bodies stacked like cordwork before the fire was set. The truth was murky, layered in hearsay, but the weight of it lingered, heavy as the air in that clearing. Hey, people still talk about screams in the woods, handprints on car windows, a girl who follows you home, dripping, wet, and silent, standing at your bedside for nights on end. I don't know what I believe. I only know what I felt. Okay. Those figures weren't people, weren't ghosts. They were something else. Something that didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be remembered. But the stories spread. Teenagers dared each other to visit. Paranormal investigators begged the dark for answers. I did the same, and it answered. That was the end of Rust Belt Shadows. The channel died in those woods, along with something in me. Some nights, when sleep won't come, I open Google Earth and find that clearing. I zoom in, staring at the pixelated ruins, the shadows that seem to shift just out of focus. I wonder if my camera's still there, half buried in the leaves, recording the whispers and shapes until its battery gave out. And I wonder if they're still watching, waiting for the next fool to pull the thread. The trail stretched before me, a ribbon of dirt and stone swallowed by the endless green of the gorge. 3 days in, and the world had already begun to feel like a dream. It's a dream that was starting to curdle. The forest was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums, heavy with secrets. I have been alone for longer than I'd expected. The steady hum of hikers' chatter and polite nods fading into memory. The last human I'd seen was yesterday at noon. A fleeting figurehood offered a quick wave before vanishing around a bend. Now it was just me, the trees, and the creeping sense that I wasn't as alone as I thought. I prepared for this hike for months, poring over maps, memorizing trail reports, plotting campsites with surgical precision. Safety in numbers, I told myself, choosing spots where others had camped before, where water whispered nearby and the ground felt solid underfoot. I was a solo woman, yes, but I wasn't naive. My gear was meticulously packed, my folding knife, a small, cold comfort in my pocket. I told myself I was ready for anything, but the gorge didn't care about my plans. It was ancient, untouched, its beauty laced with something primal, something that made my skin raising goosebumps when I lingered too long in one spot. The trees loomed closer as I descended into the gorge, their branches knitting together overhead, casting jagged shadows that danced across the path. Pools of water glittered like eyes in the undergrowth, some small as graves, others sprawling like mirrors to a sky that felt too vast. A thin creek snaked through the earth, its fast, bubbling chorus of winters I couldn't quite decipher. The air was thick with the scent of moss and mildew, grounding, yet disorienting, as if I stepped into a place that time had forgotten, a place that didn't want me here. I chose a campsite on a flat plateau, tucked between boulders and half hidden from the trail. It felt safe, or as safe as anything could in a place this wild. I pitched my tent, unrolled my sleeping bag, and boiled water for another tasteless, dehydrated meal. The routine was familiar, almost comforting, until I saw him. He was a shadow at first, maybe 50 yards off, moving slow, head bound like a predator, tracking scent. My stomach twisted, not with fear, not yet, but with that gut-deep awareness that the world had shifted. I was no longer alone. He came closer, stepping over roots with a grace that felt too deliberate, too practiced. When he looked up and saw me, he raised a hand in a lazy wave. I hesitated, then mirrored the gesture, my fingers stiff. That should have been it. A fleeting acknowledgement, two strangers passing in the wilderness. But he didn't keep walking. He veered towards me. At a time he was close enough to see clearly, I had already mapped my escape route. My gear was packed, just enough to grab and run. My knife, useless as it was, against a real threat, pressed against my thigh. "Hey there," he said, stopping just a few feet away. His voice, too warm, too easy. Didn't expect to see anyone out here. Thought I'd have the whole place to myself. He was in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, with shaggy brown hair and a stubble that looked cultivated, not neglected. His clothes were worn but clean. His pack bulky yet oddly precise, like he packed it with promise. "Yeah, same," Kay said, keeping my tone neutral. "Been quiet today." He nodded, but his eyes drifted past me, lingering on my campsite. "Mind if I set up near you? Just for the night? Safety in numbers, right?" His smile was too wide, too quick, and my instincts screamed, "No." A chorus of warning bells ringing in my skull, but he was already dropping his pack, claiming the space like my answer was irrelevant. I forced myself to nod, muttering, "Yeah, I guess, just for the night, right?" His name was Darius. He moved with an ease that unnerved me, setting up his tent with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. He talked as he worked, his voice a steady drip of casual charm. Stories about his 5 days on this trail, starting from the opposite end, weaving tales of past hikes and near misses with wildlife. He asked about my route, my job, my life beyond the trail. I answered in fragments, each word measured, giving him nothing real. No mention of my solitude, no hint that no one was expecting me for days. The less he knew, the safer I felt. The sun sank, painting the gorge in bruise-like purples. Darius began stacking firewood, a small mountain of sticks and branches rising between our chins. "No point in freezing out here," he said, flicking his lighter. "I'd as well have a good fire." I hadn't planned on a fire. Its glows would broadcast our presence, a beacon for anything or anyone watching from the dark. But the flames were already licking the wood, and arguing felt like poking a sleeping beast. The fire cast flickering shadows, twisting the trees into clawing specters. Darius grinned at me through the glow, his face half lit, half hidden. "You eaten yet?" I lied, saying I had, but he unzipped his pack and pulled out a pot. Instant rice, a can of beans, and possibly a vacuum-sealed steak. The scent of sizzling meat hit me like a betrayal, my stomach growling despite myself. "Come on," he laughed. "I can hear your stomach from here." Hesitated, but hunger won. I sat by the fire, the warmth seeping into my aching muscles as he handed me a plate. The steak was warm, rich, real, a stark contrast to the bland packets I'd been choking down for days. For a moment, I let my guard slip, lulled by the food and his easy chatter. He was charming, disarming even, spinning stories that made me laugh despite the unease coiled in my gut. The night deepened, the fire burned low, and I felt the weight of exhaustion pulling me under. My eyes fluttered shut just for a moment. When I awoke, the world was wrong. The fire was a pile of dying embers, casting a weak, pulsing glow. Air was heavy, cold, sinking into my bones like a living thing, and Darius was staring at me, and casually, not curiously. His eyes were fixed, unblinking, like a hunter studying prey. My breath caught, my body stiffening. "What?" I managed, my voice brittle. He blinked slow, like I startled him out of a trance. "Nothing. You were sleeping." His tone was flat, devoid of the warmth from before. I swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. "Yeah, I guess I should turn in. Long day tomorrow." I stood, rubbing my arms against the chill, and turned toward my tent. Footsteps crunched behind me. Too close, my heart slamming against my ribs as I twisted around. KS was there inches away, the scent of wood smoke and meat clinging to him like a second skin. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice low, almost teasing. "To bed," I said, forcing a smile. "Long day tomorrow." He didn't move, didn't smile. A silence stretched thick and suffocating until he spoke, soft as a blade, sliding from its sheath. "I thought we were going to bed, okay?" My pulse roared in my ears. The words hung there, heavy with implication, his expression unchanging. "No, Darius," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts. "That's not what this is." He stepped closer, and I stumbled back, my boots slipping on the uneven ground. "Whoa, what the hell are you doing?" I snapped, but he didn't answer. His hand shot out, closing around my wrist, his fingers ironed tight. Panic flared, white hot. "Ah." He yanked back, but his grip held, his strength overwhelming. "Darius, let me go," I said, trying to sound calm and control. He smiled a cold, empty thing. "Come on," he murmured. No need to play hard to get." I twisted, desperate, but his hold was unrelenting. My arm burned, the bones grinding under his fingers. I acted on instinct, driving my knee up hard into his groin. He grunted, a sharp animal sound, his grip loosening. Just enough, I tore free, shoved him back, and ran. The forest swallowed me. Branches clawed at my skin, snagging my clothes, as I plunged deeper into the dark. My breath burned, ragged and loud, my boots slipping on roots and rocks. I didn't stop, didn't dare to look back until the glow of the fire was gone, lost behind the wall of trees. I crouched low, pressing myself into the earth, my hand clamped over my mouth to muffle my gasping breath. Silence, then footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching through the undergrowth. "Kay, there," Darius called, his voice floating through the trees. "It's too calm, too loose. You've had your fun. Come on, it's cold out here. Don't be dumb." I stayed still, my body screaming with the effort of holding motionless. The footsteps paused, the silence stretching into eternity. "Fine," he said at last, his voice colder now, edged with something unhinged. "I'll see you in the morning." The footsteps retreated, fading into the night. I didn't move, not for hours. The cold seeped into me, my muscles cramping, my body curled tight against the damp forest floor. I drifted in and out of consciousness, every snap of a twig yanking me back to terror. When dawn finally broke, gray and weak, I listened. Cue, no footsteps, no voice, just the empty hum of the forest. Crept back to the campsite, my limbs stiff, my heart still pounding. The clearing was empty. His tent was gone, his pack vanished. The fire reduced to cold ash. My tent stood untouched, my gear exactly where I had left it. Too perfect, too clean. I tore down my camp with trembling hands, shoving everything into my pack, my eyes darting to the trees, expecting him to step out at any moment. There was no note, no sign he'd ever been there, except the lingering weight of his presence, heavy as a curse. I hiked out, my body screaming with every step. The trail felt different now, its beauty tainted, the trees watching, the shadows. Too deep? I didn't trust the silence anymore. Every hiker I passed was a threat. Terra's smiles too sharp, their eyes too curious. Kay veered off the trail when I saw them, hiking parallel through the brush until they were gone. My legs burned, blisters splitting open, but I didn't stop. Not until I reached the trailhead 3 days later, my body a wreck, my mind frayed. I signed out of the logbook, my hand shaking. As I scrolled my name, then I saw it. Curious's name written in thick, uneven letters, dated the same day as mine. He'd left just hours before me, heading back the way I had come. My stomach lurched. I scanned the parking lot, the road beyond, the unfamiliar cars gleaming under the sun. He was out there somewhere. I threw my gear into my car, locked the doors, and gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles bled, took one last breath, deep and shuddering, and drove away. The trail was behind me, but its shadows clung to me, heavy and cold. I haven't been back since. And sometimes in the quiet of the night, I swear I can still hear his voice whispering through the trees. "I'll see you in the morning." As I sink into the passenger seat, the warm leather ground beneath me, its cold, cracked surface clawing at my skin like skeletal fingers. A shiver ran through me, not from the chill of the autumn evening, but from an inexplicable dread that coiled in my gut. Max, my boyfriend, offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Those tired, hollow eyes that seemed to reflect the dying light of the sun. "Okay." He turned the key in the ignition and the engine sputtered to life with a guttural roar like some beast stirring from a restless slumber. We were headed home, a 7-hour drive to surprise our families for the holiday weekend. But the thrill of the journey felt tainted, as if the road ahead was watching us, waiting. We'd left campus late, far later than I had wanted. Max had an afternoon class in the chaos of packing, bidding hasty farewells to friends, and grabbing a greasy diner meal had delayed us until the sun bled orange across the horizon. The world outside was slipping into shadow as we merged onto the highway, the darkness swallowing the car whole. The only sounds were the low hum of the engine and the eerie murmur of Max's obscure indie radio station, its haunting melody slithering through the air like whispers from another world. I leaned back, closing my eyes, trying to let the rhythmic thrum of the tires lull me into calm. But the unease clung to me, heavy and suffocating. "Don't die on me now," Max teased, his hand grazing my thigh. His touch, meant to be playful, felt like a jolt of electricity, sharp and unwelcome. I forced a laugh, swatting him away as he tickled the inside of my leg, but my heart wasn't in it. Something felt wrong. The air in the car was thick, oppressive, as if the night itself was pressing against the windows, trying to get in. We'd been driving for an hour or two, to landscape morphing from suburban sprawl to desolate badlands, scrubby hills, and skeletal cacti clawing at the sky. The GPS glowed with an unnatural light, its soothing voice announcing our progress like a siren luring us deeper into the void. A pair of headlights approached in the rear-view mirror, distant first, then closing in with a steady, predatory pace. "Check it out. We got a road, buddy," I said, trying to sound light, but my voice trembled. The headlights lingered a 4-mile behind, matching our speed, never overtaking. I told myself it was comforting to have another car on this lonely stretch of road. But the truth was, those lights felt like eyes watching, waiting, hunting. The night wore on, the stars above glinting like shards of broken glass, scattered across the black velvet sky. I dozed fitfully, my head lolling against the window, the cold glass biting into my temple. The radio had shifted to a soft rock station, its melodies blending into a hypnotic drone that dragged me under. I drifted in and out of sleep, the world a haze of sound and shadow, until a sudden jolt ripped me awake. The car behind us had crept closer, now barely 100 feet from our bumper. Its headlights cast long skeletal shadows across the road, stretching towards us like grasping hands. Without warning, the vehicle swerved into the passing lane, but it didn't accelerate. It lingered, its grille level with our tail end, a bulking presence that seemed to breathe menace. "What the underscore are these guys doing?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. "I don't know. Super weird," Max said, his knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. "I'm just going to let them pass." He eased off the gas, but then two things happened that turned my blood to ice. First, the other vehicle killed its headlights, plunging the road into near total darkness. Then, it veered sharply into our lane. Max swore, yanking the wheel to the right, but it was too late. The impact was deafening, sickening crunch of metal on metal that sent our careening off the road. We plowed through the brush and rocks, the world spinning wildly as I screamed, clawing for something to hold on to. We hit a covert and everything went black. I wasn't sure if I was alive or dead. The world was gone, replaced by a suffocating void. A faint breeze stirred the air, carrying the acrid scent of burnt rubber and gasoline. My hair tickled my face, and something gritty, pebbles, or perhaps glass, littered my lap. The taste of blood, warm and metallic, coated the back of my throat. I tried to open my eyes, but they wouldn't obey. Or maybe they were open, and the darkness was absolute. I imagined the windshield shattering, shards slicing into my face, my eyes reduced to ruined, bleeding sockets. The thought made my stomach lurch. The world flickered back into focus, dim and distorted. My head throbbed, a dull, relentless pulse that felt like nails being driven into my skull. Max's voice cut through the haze, a panic whisper. "Kendall, oh my God, are you okay?" I nodded. Every movement sent waves of pain crashing through me. Our car was lodged in a ditch, the engine sputtering like a dying animal. The radio still played, its soft rock now warped and distorted, dribbling through broken speakers like a mocking lullaby. The dashboard glowed with warning lights, a constellation of chaos in the dark. Then I saw them. Two figures emerged from me, the shadows, their silhouettes jagged and unnatural, like specters clawing their way out of the earth. Their faces twisted into cruel, predatory grins, caught the red glow of our brake lights. They stumbled towards us, boots crunching on gravel, their voices slurred and venomous. The vehicle behind us, a rusted mud-caked truck, loomed in the darkness, its presence as oppressive as the men themselves. They were tall, broad, their flannel shirts and hats giving them the appearance of grotesque caricatures of rural life. "Well, well, well, what do we got here?" One of them sneered, his eyes raking over me through the shattered window. His gaze was a violation, a cold blade slicing through my skin. Couple kids, all alone. Lovebirds, more like the other Giroud, planting a heavy boot against the side of the car. The impact rocked the vehicle, and I realized the pebbles in my lap were shards of glass from the windshield, jagged hole marking where my head had collided. I hadn't been wearing my seatbelt. Okay, the thought made my vision swim. Max fumbled with the door locks, his hands trembling. I tried to speak, to scream, but my voice was a hoarse rasp, barely audible. The men circled the car like vultures, their footsteps echoing in my skull, each one a hammer blow to my fringed nerves. "You're a long way from home, ain't you?" one of them said, his voice like rusted iron scraping against stone. "You shouldn't be here." "Fuck off," spat, his voice shaking but defiant. The man laughed, a low guttural sound that made my skin crawl. "Now, that ain't very nice," he said, kicking the car again. I sank deeper into my seat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The wreck was terrifying, but this was something else, something primal and malevolent. "Good thing we stopped you," the other man said, his voice dripping with menace. "Get to teach y'all some manners." He smashed his fist against Max's window, the glass shuddering but holding. I yelled, the sound escaping before I could stop it. Max's face was pale, his eyes darting around the ear, searching for a way out. His phone lay in his lap, the screen showing a string of failed calls. No service, no help. The men tapped on the windows, their fingers moving like spiders, deliberate and unnerving. They swayed slightly, their movements unsteady, confirming my suspicion. They were drunk, but that only made them even more dangerous, more unpredictable. "Don't worry, it's okay. We're still in the car," Max whispered, but his voice was thin, unconvincing. He turned the key, silencing the engine's death rattle. Then one of the men pulled a knife, its blade glinting in the moonlight like a sliver of bone. "Let's have some fun," he sneered, his eyes locked on mine. "Why don't you go get the shotgun?" said to his companion, who laughed. a sound like breaking glass and stumbled back to the truck. The man with the knife stayed, dragging the blade along my door with a slow, deliberate scrape that set my teeth on edge. I covered my ears, my voice breaking as I begged him to stop. "Oh, honey, I like it when you talk like that," he said, his words slithering into my ears, poisoning my thoughts. My soul shriveled, curling in on itself as I clung to Max, our hands intertwined, our hearts racing in unison. We heard the truck door slam twice, the sound sharp and vinyl like the closing of a coffin lid. The second man returned, a shotgun slung over his shoulder, its barrel glinting ominously. "Come get him." Out of the car, the knife wielder said, his voice thick with sadistic glee. "I want to see what this girl's ass looks like." The knife pressed against my window, its tip scratching the glass with a sound like a scream trapped in ice. I bit back a cry, knowing it would only fuel their cruelty. Max's muscles tense, his hand slipping from mine as he formed a fist. "Had about enough," he whispered, his voice low and dangerous. I saw the shift in his eyes, the spark of defiance that both terrified and electrified me. He reached for the driver's side door, quietly, popping it open. Our overhead light had been broken for months, so no telltale glow betrayed his movement. "Don't," I hissed, but he was already moving, his body coiled like a spring. The man with the shotgun lurched toward the front of the car, raising the barrel as if to fire through the windshield. My heart stopped, time slowing to a crawl. Max scrambled backwards, leaning against the center console. And with a sudden, explosive motion, he kicked the door open. It swung wide, slamming into the man with the shotgun and sending him sprawling into the dirt. Max slipped out, stumbling in the sandy ditch, but quickly regaining his footing. He pounced on the fallen man, pinning him to the ground, the shotgun trapped beneath their struggling bodies. "Oh, fuck," the knife wielder shouted, stumbling around the car to help his companion. I climbed onto the dashboard, my breath hitching as I watched Max wrestle with the man beneath him. He had the upper hand, holding the man's wrist to keep the gunshot pinned. I slammed my fist on the horn, the blaring sound startling the knife wielder, who jumped back. "He's coming," I screamed, my voice raw with panic. Max glanced up. Mistake. The man beneath him shifted, his fingers brushing the shotgun's trigger. A deafening boom split the night, a blinding flash searing across my vision. My ears rang, my head spinning as I braced for the blood, the gore, the end. But when the haze cleared, all three men were frozen, checking themselves for wounds. Shot had gone wide, tearing through the air, but hitting nothing. "Tim, you all right?" the knife wielder asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know. Yeah, I think so." The man on the ground replied, his voice too loud, his ears likely ringing from the blast. "Maxie's, too. Hey man, if you just let him up, we'll go," the knife welder said, his tone suddenly softer, almost pleading. This went too far. We were just kidding around. "You," Max roared, hand to my shock. He began pummeling the man beneath him, his fists raining down on the back of the man's head. "You laughing now?" the man pleaded, his voice breaking, and Max finally stopped, his chest heaving. The knife wielder rushed forward, pulling Max off of his companion. They struggled briefly, but Max broke free, stepping back, his fists still clenched. The two men scrambled to their truck, tossing the knife and shotgun inside. I sank back into my seat, my mind reeling, unable to process the surreal shift. Max climbed back into the car, slamming the door. He put the car into neutral and stared in the rearview mirror, his face a mask of rage and exhaustion. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They're going to pull us out," he said, his tone flat. "They feel bad now, not just 'cause I beat that guy's ass." He let out a hollow chuckle. I stared at him, incredulous. "Are you kidding me?" "Oh, They left at some bar, saw our out-of-state plates, and decided to mess with us. It went too far. I couldn't believe it. The truck's engine roared, and I felt the tug as they began towing us out of the ditch. They unhooked the strap, and one of them approached Max's window, offering a slurred apology and a handshake. Max, the wrestler, the fighter, took it, his grip firm, his eyes cold. They drove off, their taillights fading into the night like the eyes of a retreating predator. We made it home at dawn, our car battered but functional. Our families were stunned to see us, their joy tempered by the story of our ordeal. We told it over and over, the words feeling less real each time, as if the night had been a fever dream. But the glass in my hair, the blood on my tongue, the echo of that shotgun blast, they were real, okay? And as I lay in bed that night, the darkness pressing against my window, I couldn't shake the feeling that those men, okay, those specters were still out there waiting for another car, another pair of kids to stumble into their trap. I've lived in this remote cabin for 5 years now, a creaking relic of my grandfather's hands, swallowed by a sea of gnarled pines and snow that stretches into an endless, suffocating void. Winter reigns here, a cruel monarch wielding storms that can bury you alive. Of the damned, and the cold seeps into your bones, whispering promises of eternity. I learned to prepare for the worst, stockpiling firewood, hoarding cans of food, coaxing life into the generator's reluctant hum. This isn't my full-time home. I inherited it from an uncle who left it to rot after his death. I came here for a few months each year to honor family traditions, to maintain its brittle bones, and to escape the city's incessant clamor. But solitude, I've learned, is a blade that cuts both ways. In the city, I was a writer, or tried to be. The noise, the lights, the suffocating press of people made my words wither before they could take root. Here in this desolate sanctuary, the silence is a living thing, thick and heavy, wrapping around me like a shroud. It's just me. The fires crackle and the ghosts of my family woven into the cabin's walls. I rekindled my writing here, pouring myself into a novel that remains unfinished, its pages haunted by my own inadequacy. My days follow a rhythm. Wake at dawn, stoke the fire, write until my fingers ache, then wander the frozen trails that sneak through the forest. The woods are beautiful in their desolation, streams frozen into glassy veins, trees groaning under the weight of snow. But beauty here is deceptive, a mask for something older, hungrier. When I'm not writing or wandering, I'm at war with the cabin itself. The seasons are merciless, splitting window sills, warping steps, clawing at the roof. My uncle ignored it once, and a leak nearly claimed the place. This cabin is a labor of love and punishment, a structure that demands constant sacrifice. Spring brings floods, saturating the earth until it weeps. Summer scorches it dry, threatening drought. Falls, winds strip away warmth, and then winter returns, burying everything in a silent white grave. The storms can last for days. Snowdrifts piling against the windows, sometimes higher than my own head. The only sounds are the winds wail, the trees creaks, and occasionally the distant howl of wolves. They don't scare me. Wolves are honest. People though, people are what make my skin crawl. This is the story of what happened in the winter of 2001, when the snow brought something far worse than a storm. It began after a blizzard that raged for 3 days, blanketing the world in a suffocating white. When the skies cleared, I stepped outside to survey the damage and found them. Footprints, faint and deliberate, etched in the snow around my property. They circled the cabin, weaving through the trees as if whoever made them was testing the edges of my world. This was no stray hiker, okay? My cabin sits deep in a national forest, 25 miles from the nearest neighbor. The few of us scattered across the Mountainside life in isolation by design. No running water, no electricity, just walls to keep out the cold. These prints were wrong. It's too light, too careful, as if their maker wanted to be a ghost. I followed the tracks, my breath clouding in the frigid air. They looped around my property 5 times, a ritualistic dance that took me half an hour to trace. Whoever this was, they had purpose, a patience that felt predatory. I scanned the trees, but the forest was silent, its shadows swallowing any sign of life. The prints faded as the snow melted. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. A lost backpacker, maybe searching for a signal, but the tracks reappeared with every fresh snowfall, always circling, always closer. By the end of the week, they were pressed against the cabin's walls, as if the stranger had leaned in to listen, to breathe in my fear. In my fear, I was alone out here, cut off from the world. The sheriff was a day's journey away, unreachable in a storm. My rifle becomes my constant companion, its weight, a cold comfort. One morning, as I stoked the fire and brewed coffee, I saw him, a figure at the forest's edge, cloaked in tattered rags, moving with a jerky, unnatural rhythm. My gut twisted. He didn't belong here. Pressed against the window, but he melted into the trees before I could make out his face. Applied, my heart pounded, urging me to chase him, to confront him. But something primal held me back. He didn't want to be seen. Not yet. That night, I wrote about him, my pen trembling as I poured my fear onto the page. I've seen him now, closer to my cabin, my barn. I don't know what he wants, but I know I don't want him here. Why does he circle in the dead of night? The shadows are growing sinister, and I feel like a presence watching, waiting for its moment to strike. I keep my rifle close, but I'm unprepared. What does he want? What has he seen? The words felt like a confession, a plead to the void. I paced the cabin, jumping at every creak, every groan of the old wood. The isolation was clawing at me, turning every shadow into a threat. The footprints grew bolder, pressing right up to the windows, as if he was peering inside, his breath fogging the glass. I imagined his eyes, cold, unblinking, boring into me. I stopped sleeping, my nights spent pacing, rifle in hand, scanning the darkness. One night, I saw him again, standing at the forest's edge, his silhouette stark against the snow. His eyes locked onto mine, unyielding like a predator, sizing up its prey. I raised my rifle, my finger trembling on the trigger, but he didn't move, didn't flinch. Then, in an instant, he was gone, swallowed by the night. I told myself it was a trick of the light, but my body knew better. He was real, and he was coming, closer. The next morning, the tracks were everywhere, circling the cabin, the barn, the windows. They were taunting me, showing me he could come and go as he pleased. I was trapped, a rabbit in a snare, waiting for the wolf to strike. I considered fleeing to my neighbor's cabin, but the snow was too deep, the journey too treacherous. All I could do was wait, watch, and pray he didn't come for me. Then, one morning, I woke to find fresh tracks leading straight to the barn. My blood ran cold. They wound through the snow, deliberate and unhurried, disappearing into the barn's shadowed. There were no tracks leading out. He was still inside. I gripped my rifle and flashlight, my body numb with dread. The barn was a cavern of darkness, its stalls and bales untouched since my grandfather's time. I followed the tracks, muddy and slick with melted snow. My heart thundering in my chest, every step echoed like a death knell. In the far corner, behind a tangle of hoses and boards, I saw him, a gaunt figure with fire-red hair and a wild glinting stare. His clothes were rags, his boots worn to nothing, his hands twisted and scarred as if they'd been broken and left to rot. "Hey, Mr. Schoner," he said, his voice flat, lifeless, like a recording from some forgotten place. I didn't answer, just leveled the rifle and forced him outside. He moved with an eerie calm, his face blank, his eyes burning with something I couldn't name. In the yard, I questioned him, but his answers were a jumbled stream of madness. Ramblings about school, teachers, a life that didn't exist. His name was Adam, he said, and he was tall, emaciated, his red beard matted like a wild animal's. His hands clutched a big lighter, which he offered me with a trembling hand. "I'm not supposed to have it," he whispered. "I might use it," I refused, my voice sharp, and told him to leave. He nodded, his eyes gleaming with a madness that made my skin crawl, and wandered into the woods, muttering to himself, a litany of names, of places, of horrors I couldn't quite comprehend. I thought it was over, that he'd stay gone for good. 2 days passed, and I almost believed I was safe. Then I saw it. A plume of black smoke rising from the forest where Noah houses stood. My stomach dropped. I radioed the sheriff, my voice shaking, and drove toward the fire. When I arrived, I saw him, Adam, shirtless, waving a smoldering branch like a mad prophet. His eyes owl-light with a feverish glee. The firefighters were already there, battling the flames, and the police arrived soon after. Adam surrendered without a fight, his face empty, as if the fire had burned away whatever humanity he had left. They told me later he was a drifter from the next state, a man broken by drugs and madness, known for causing trouble in the winter's depths. They took him to a clinic, and I never heard of him again. But as I drove back to my cabin, the lighter he'd offered me haunted my thoughts. Had he meant to burn it all down? Had he seen something in me, some weakness that made him choose my cabin, my barn, my life? The fire was out, but the shadow of his presence lingered, staying on my mind that no amount of solitude could wash away. I still live in the cabin for a few months each year, tending its wounds, writing my endless novel. But the silence isn't the same anymore. It's heavier now, laced with the echo of footsteps, the glint of red hair in the dark. I keep my rifle closer than ever. And every creak of the cabin, every whisper of the wind feels like a warning. He's gone, but the forest remembers.